Good morning, everybody. John Fiocca here for Gen AI News Briefing from GAI Insights, reading the top news, essential, important, or optional, to save you time and give you insight as to what's happening in the world of AI. So today we have Adam and Akash, and we will probably have Luda shortly. She's having a little bit of technical difficulty. But Akash, why don't you start us off this morning?
Sure, John, just bringing up my screen. Okay. So the first one that we have for today comes from Glean. Glean has raised $250 million and it is now valued at $4.5 billion.
So, Adam, what'd you think of this, baby? Huh? Good day for
This is actually they haven't raised it. They're close to closing a second round of funding that would give them this valuation. So this is actually technically still just speculative. It says they're set to raise 250 million and that they are in advanced discussions for a deal. So this isn't even news yet, frankly. And it's 250 million, which when you think about what some of these companies are getting, sure, 4.5 billion in funding, but 250 million is no longer some, frankly, newsworthy investment round. And if they're getting ready to a second round, it's great. They have some good customers. Basically, they do sort of like a Microsoft Copilot kind of thing. They let people chat with their data and build interfaces where people can use large language to talk to their own information. It's a very crowded market. It's good for them and their longevity that they're getting another 250 million. We are seeing eye-watering valuations, right? 4.5 billion. After coming up so quickly. But it's in a way, surprisingly or not surprisingly now, becoming par for the course. So I would consider this optional news, particularly in light of the fact that they actually haven't closed the round of funding yet.
All right. So an announcement on a probable. What do you think, Luda?
Yeah, I would certainly put it optional, but the valuations are incredible. And also, I think the fact that they are running 50 million annualized revenue and assuming that they will get to 100 by the end of the year, that's actually significant. So there is a market need that they are addressing. So I think that's noteworthy, but optional.
Yeah, valuation close to 100 times revenue.
Yeah, right.
The as my
and
Irish grandmother used to say, it's good work if you can get it. With that. I think it's an interesting space though. This notion of how do you take your Slack and your Microsoft SharePoint and your Google Drives and put the model in the middle of the organization. I could see this as a very important target acquisition, not unlike Slack. Which I think went for, how much was Slack go for? I want to say 20 plus billion. I forget. I think I'm confusing it with LinkedIn. Anyway, Slack went for a big number. So I could see them getting acquired for a big number. But optional, Akash, next.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from Microsoft. So in a recent event which was focused on cybersecurity, someone highlighted how Microsoft AI can be turned into an automated phishing machine.
Luda, shocking. AI used for bad things. What do you think?
Yeah, that's something to be expected. Even though Microsoft, we saw what they've done in terms of security, and they've done a pretty good job. However, you always can get around these tools if you really focus on. So I think it's optional. Microsoft will make sure that these gaps are closed. But this is a startup. This is a CEO of the startup in security space looking for a path to promote what they do. So they absolutely found the various ways to go around Copilot and demonstrate it. So it's not as bad as it sounds, and I'm sure the Microsoft will fix it. So I think it's optional.
All right, optional news. There's an interesting quote in here about every time you add AI, you add a new vulnerability point, which I think is again, not that insightful, kind of fun. What do you think, Adam?
Now, I'll just add, the most alarming things in this article are based on the premise that someone has already compromised your email address.
Yes, right.
So and then what they could do because they have your Copilot, right? So it's a bit of a stretch. I think it's mostly probably FUD marketing, right? They're trying to get people scared into spending on their security posture. But there are some absolutely brilliant vulnerabilities, frankly, here. But nonetheless, it's pretty corner case. And
yes,
option.
not that surprising. If somebody's in your kitchen, they can do stuff with your food. My God. All right. Big O. Thank you, Michael. All right. Michael Novak says Big O for sure. Carney. All right. I took this one myself. I kind of had to laugh. I mean, I know some of the guys are actually a good friend of mine runs a big piece of Carney. Anyway, they have a lovely leaderboard. If you go down a little bit, Ankash, it shows you what the leaderboard is. Keep going down. Keep going down. Yeah.
And zoom in a little bit on that, Ankash, if you can. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a lovely notion. I think, and that they're going to take the big guys. You can see here, Mr. Meta, Google, and give an overall score. And the things seem reasonable: enterprise readiness, performance, aggregate, accessibility, functionality, usability, cost, and so forth. However, I think they're just announcing. I couldn't see any place where you can actually access this, and I think they're just announcing their approach. It's a very short article. I used to run marketing at PwC, and I would have beat our folks up for doing something so abbreviated. This is just, to me, announcementware on a framework that you need to hire them to help find, I guess. And just tell me if I'm wrong on that. I couldn't see any place to get access to it. So definitely optional.
No, I think you're looking at what you get access to. This is their leaderboard. Like they have made this qualitative assessment, and here it is.
Yeah. Okay.
And I love that they have a section on the page further down about our methodology, but their methodology is that those criteria are the criteria they use. Like they say absolutely nothing about what they're really basing this on. And they even say it's qualitative. Like it's a nice view of the landscape, but it's basically just their assessment, and it's a bit of a black box at that. It seems like they want to sort of keep it loose and subjective so that they can sort of watch the landscape shift. I don't know.
Yeah, but I love when people do that, and then they do a number with the precision of 2 decimal points. It's like, okay, I mean, it always bugs me when people go across data types. So you have cardinal stuff, you have categorical, you have numeric, right? And they take, when you think about like what do you really have when you take a judgment call that puts it into a category, which is a subjective categorical, not numeric number. You turn that into a number, and then you aggregate those numbers into a score. You basically have no information. But I mean, that's part of a longer methodological discussion.
Yeah, it's a qualitative assessment that's represented quantitatively.
Right.
Yeah, Michael is asking whether there are other metrics that you could measure across the board. There are a whole bunch, Michael, and I can't give you that off the top of my head, but there are several quantitative, and the LLMs themselves measure against each other using that. So this is certainly a promotional piece on Puzzle Journey. And it's also the case that it's very hard to maintain. I mean, how do you maintain that, right? It's almost impossible. So I think it's a waste of effort other than promote their brand.
And I will just call out, in case anyone from Kearney happens to be listening at some point, on that table right there in the bottom right, it says something performance. There's actually a typo. So it was definitely not written. Yeah, the next one over. Yeah, that one right there says performance. Yeah.
I think they fixed it. It says performance now.
Oh, did they already?
No, performance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was definitely not written by a robot. We can say that.
Michael Novak wants us to promote our event coming up on enterprise intelligence architectures. And I agree. Thank you, Michael. Up in October, we are going to be talking about how you think about these as well as overall organization. But we're not bashing this because we have a competitive product. We just don't think it's that well done. All right. All right. Optional. Next.
Okay, the next one is a research paper. So I think last week only we saw a release from OpenAI where they were providing structured outputs from the model so that it can be used effectively on APIs. Now, this research paper talks about how the structuring puts the restriction on the performance of large language models.
Yeah, I continue to be impressed by the amount of research and architectural kind of conversations that we're seeing out of the Chinese researchers, whether it be in Taiwan or mainland China.
But remember, hold on, before Adam goes, but remember we talked about when we rated the structured outputs paper, we said, look, it might be, or I said rather, there is probably a restriction on performance, and here you go. That certainly proves that there are restrictions on performance. You can't. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Our predictions on restrictions.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. However, Adam and I disagree on that one. This one, Adam, go for it.
Yeah, John, I saw your comment there as well, and I was looking forward to talking about it with you because, as you said, it's intuitive that asking for a structured format from a probabilistic model is likely to degrade the performance, and I agreed, and so this seemed a bit apparent to me at first, but what was non-intuitive is the way that you're being restrictive. It's not that you're asking it to get data in a different way. It's only in this example here the way the data is being returned. Ankaj, if you scroll down just a little, I'll show what you mean. It literally asks the exact same question. And it's just that the responses, which are just two pieces of data that it's getting from the model, one of them, it says, just put it in JSON as that response. And the other one, it just asks it for the response. It's not that it's trying to have it adhere to a certain structure or format. It's still just responding with the exact two, like the same two queries from the model. It's just putting them into JSON when it returns them, which is a little different than what I thought would restrict a probabilistic model. Like literally in my day job, we're writing a solution for a customer, and we're querying ChatGPT or GPT-4 on the back end, and we're saying, give us the data back in a structured format, just because it's easier for us to deal with it.
Right, sure.
Versus getting the text back and then having to put that into a JSON. But that will, it sounds like, be actually a much better approach, is not to ask the LLM to give it back to you as JSON, right? And that's a little beyond my intuition about, I just want structured data versus a structured response that's asking the same question either time. So for that reason, I thought it was important to understand really what this is finding, and even just that one graph right there, those pictures of the format restricting prompting, you'll see the instruction is actually identical. Yeah. Right. It's just one of them says put it back saying JSON pairs, the other says just give it to me. And so for people who are building prompts right now and working with these models, it can make a big difference, and it's a simple fix. Awesome. So that's why I thought it was a little more than optional. In this case.
No, you convinced me, because I'm sure this is a very, very common use, as you say. Give me structured data output so I can do something with it.
And it's not that hard to take the data that you get back from it and then put it into a JSON format. It's giving it to you in the value structures anyway. So it's an easy fix that it sounds like can make a big difference.
So Luda, we're heading for important. Where are you on this thing?
I was actually going.
Can I just take a picture of that look? It's like
I was actually going optional because it's yes, I agree, Adam, that this is a difference, and it's not intuitive what you described, right? But it's a little bit esoteric. It's down in the weeds. The fact remains that this is a restriction. And if you really want to have a structured output, you better ask for the structured output, because they conclude at the end that there are some ways to make the non-structured LLM to provide the structured outputs without telling it to be structured, but they're not effective. So essentially, so I don't know. Maybe for that reason, go important. Yeah, go important. Fine.
Important it is. Okay, I'm Pat. We're going important. Next, please.
Okay. The next one comes from Financial Times, and it talks about how Microsoft has spread its bets beyond OpenAI.
All right, here we have Satya Nadella laying off his bets. Luda, what do you think?
It's I think it's a pretty optional article. We kind of watched the drama of what happened with OpenAI and ousting of the CEO and the board coming, disintegrating, coming back together, and then some people leaving. So and the Microsoft response to this is try to become independent from OpenAI, and that's what they're doing. Obviously, potentially straining relationships between the two companies. So it's nothing unexpected. I think Microsoft is doing what they should as a big company. So it's optional.
All right, with the big O, Adam.
I had one argument in favor of important. I was leaning towards optional, but I was on the fence, and I wanted to just raise it and see what you both think. And that's just that there has been a lot that has gone on in the last 6 months with Microsoft and OpenAI, and maneuvers around Microsoft and Anthropic, and Microsoft and this and that, and OpenAI and this and that. And this actually encapsulates almost everything that's worth noting. In one article. I might have it be like a lower back pocket Tim sort of important, but if someone's like, I need to figure out what's been going on and get up to speed, this pretty much ticks all of the boxes in terms of painting the landscape around these two big players right now. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, I thought it might be worth highlighting. Yeah. But generally, it's all the news of what's gone on. There's nothing really, added from an insightful perspective from this article. So that's why I was feeling it was optional as well.
Gotcha. So kind of a cliff notes or synopsis of, their different activities. Hey, if our AI leader gets poked and says, hey, is Microsoft really, what happens here? What's going on with OpenAI? Gives them a little bit of fodder. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence myself between optional and important. It's not badly written. I don't think it was written just by a robot and or by a lousy person.
The reason I would put it optional, guys, is because this is not going to sway the enterprise leader one way or the other. And if they really wanted to get a sense, Perplexity will probably cite this article as the first one. So I just think it's optional.
All right, optional it is. It's optional. A long read, that's for sure.
All right, last one. Oh, sorry.
Okay, the last one that we have comes from Nicholas Kalani, and he talks about how he is using GenAI in his day-to-day work.
Yeah, I gave this one to myself. I was leaning toward important on this thing. So this article lays out what I think is a very thoughtful set of actual use cases in the way that, Carlini uses it day to day in his work. It's a very long article. Truth be told, I only got through about half of it, but the preamble I think is important, which is that he, I think, gave the appropriate set of caveats around, I'm not saying this is a universal solvent. I'm not saying that, that there aren't ethical issues. I'm not saying that there aren't concerns around labor productivity, that there aren't concerns about intellectual property. But he just goes through about the day-to-day uses and gives tons of examples of how, as a technology professional, these current models, just the way they are lending tremendous productivity along two dimensions. One, helping him understand new things or new ways of doing things if you're going to a new language or a new set of applications. So a very personal, flexible tutor. And the other is to automate routine tasks or low value added tasks. And those two things together are incredibly important for any professional. So because of that, I was going to go for important. What do you guys think?
I would back it up as important for a slightly different reason. Remember, we encouraging all the AI professionals and especially AI leaders to experiment with different models in their everyday work and decision making. And it is even though it's coming from a person who does coding, so he understands the the stack of AI, right? And he uses it in that space. However, as we know, LLMs can be very useful in a whole bunch of different ways in those two categories. So I just think this article generalizes very well to a number of professions and a number of fields, and kind of tells you how to do it, right? Just use it. Just ask the question, just prompt, and he gives the examples of how he's working with it, right? So I think this is very useful to anyone. So that's why important.
So I'm landing on important as well, but I think it's because I feel it's both optional and essential. So I want to split the difference. Ankaj put in the comments here, and I agree with him. For AI leaders who want to leverage Gen AI in this orgs, like every technical person of theirs should read this. Like if they don't understand the ways that they can be using this, right? And Nicholas does a phenomenal job of not just telling the stories, but showing them. There's a whole bunch of every use case. You can actually go read the entire conversation. He shares his conversation with the LLM. And I think those are tremendously insightful. I just also feel they're very, very specific. And as a result of him sharing so much, it's an incredibly long article. And a lot of people will probably not get the message because it won't be relatable enough to the ways that they could be using it, as great as the examples are. So I think for every technical person in an organization, they should be, hey, check this out. Go look at these examples and get a feel for just how you talk to it. Like it does such a great job of giving you that sense of how do you have a conversation with this thing? It's not just input, output. It's this ongoing nuance and context. And he does that brilliantly. Yeah. It's just in such a niche that I think a lot of people, it might not be accessible to them. So I'm sort of on both ends of the spectrum. So I would land in the middle as well.
But you know, Ankash is right. What he's saying, it's essentially a directive to the AI leaders to take this article and send it down to say every person in my organization should read this article.
Well, every technical person is I think the nuance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the person in marketing won't get the use cases through analogy because they won't be able to understand the technology.
You know, it's interesting, and you raise a great point. I'm probably going to experiment with taking this article and sticking it into a model and saying, do this for marketing, do this for finance. You know what I mean? Because I think that.
But I think really, guys, it's very, in the weeds when the first he asks the question, but then he goes and tightens it, right? So, but it's just, he doesn't have any fear to asking the question. And that's where in a lot of cases in marketing and in operations, people just don't do that. So it's an encouragement to really use LLMs everywhere. You know, settle on your favorite variety of an LLM and just use it. That's what for me, that's the message down from the AI leader. Essential for me. I'm upgrading.
You're upgrading to essential. Okay, interesting. I could be persuaded on essential. I thought it was definitely, important. it goes back to that article that we wrote on design with dialogue. That, your organization was in the Harvard Business Review back a couple months ago. The organization doesn't know how to work with Gen AI. I think this whole notion of, and you've talked a lot about it, Adam, how we think about agentic behavior, interacting with agents, having a conversation with the machine. I think it's whole new science, personally, about how to think about dialogue, how to think about doing your work in the context of dialogue. And a lot of, it's been a long time since we've gone back and looked at that. I know teaching at Harvard Business School, we used to talk a lot about discussion teaching and what it does to the brain and how you think about doing it and how do you use questions and what's the emotional context in terms of cognitive development. We spent a lot of time on that at Harvard Business School, but most organizations don't, and I think most technical people don't. So I think it's wonderful. In the spirit of the kind of thing we used to do, this is very much a case study, but a case study more than teaching than a case study. How do you develop the ideas and the conversations you go ahead I do think it was all under an umbrella of a wonderful article by a guy named, I think his name was Flag, which was because wisdom can't be told. If you look at actually cognitive development, you want to develop cognition for judgment. It's really about putting people into a situation, sometimes pressured, with examples and options that they make choices among in a highly emotional environment, like you're doing it in front of 90 people under pressure. I'm not highly emotional, whatever, relatively emotional. And it's been shown that if the three of us think that we might be asked a question, that we actually learn the stuff better than if we're just passively absorbing it. And I think that is a very big difference. And I think in a lot of these cases, this is trying to have a conversation, if you use it right, to transfer wisdom. And I just want to say, for the record, that is not Socratic dialogue. Okay, Socrates wasn't a discussion teacher. He would pummel you to death until he won. Okay, so that's a very different process. But
just to note to everyone saying, what do they think? Essential, important. A couple of votes, guys, would be very interesting. The ones who are listening. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm leaning toward essential. Yay! All right, we're going essential early on a Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. Akash, you get your big tote board, and then I was just trying to find our conference stuff for tonight. Do you guys remember what we have in our learning lab?
I do not. Maybe Adam does.
Let's see.
Lucinda, vote for essential. Good.
All right, we're going for essential.
Yeah.
All right. This evening, we do have our learning lab at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
It's about the different types of open source. We have Michael Blake talking about the different types of open source and what does it mean based on, whether it's a creative license or full this or that. There's a few sort of different distinctions there. I clearly will be there taking notes. Great.
Yes, and actually, Ankaj, I think this is wrong. It's how I use AI is the essential one.
Yeah.
And then I think the
Microsoft we ended that
important, didn't we?
No, optional.
Yeah, I think optional.
Okay, I thought we ended up with Microsoft spread its bets beyond OpenAI as important. I thought we had two importance and essential. So I think the Microsoft spreads its bets beyond AI, the bottom one, is important. So we have.
Oh, we said the study that we put the structured output study. We put important.
Yes, that's what. Let me speak freely.
Yeah,
So that's correct. I think this is
but
correct.
Luda, you think on the Microsoft one we ended up on optional?
Optional, right? That's what
we did.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
One essential, one
important.
Yeah. All right, Ankash, sorry I'm screwing you up here. How Microsoft spread its bets beyond OpenAI is now optional. Okay, so we have three O's, an I, and an E. very good. And we have, I think, a very important topic in terms of how much you want, how you think about the different open models and their licenses and so forth, which are do make a difference, whether it's Apache or GNU or the MIT license or whatever. And as we get into the whole cognitive layer, we think that's going to be more and more important in terms of owning your own intelligence. Also, for those who didn't see it, we had another article published in Harvard Business Review last week on August the 8th that dealt with some learnings from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan as they implement responsible AI at scale in a $35 billion organization, highly regulated, and one in which if you get the regulations wrong, you could actually end up in jail, unlike the financial services people who seem to be able to get away with murder. Anyway, we'll leave it with that and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.